So he followed her as editor of the News of the World. And for at least 6 years of their time together at News International, so we're told, Andy Coulson and Rebekah Brooks were having an affair. The significance of the revelation, according to the prosecutor Andrew Edis, was that the relationship covered much of the period they were said to be involved together in a criminal conspiracy to hack phones. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davies reports from the Old Bailey.
Arriving with her husband at the Old Bailey on a damp, grey morning in central London, Rebekah Brooks. Charlie Brooks at her side on the day that news would break of her past affair with Andy Coulson, her erstwhile deputy and, as it's now claimed, secret lover at the News of the World. The man who would become David Cameron's head of communications, the woman once fated as Rupert Murdoch's protégé. Both in a relationship which began in the late 90s, claimed the prosecution, and covered a period in which they're alleged to have been involved in a phone hacking conspiracy. Why am I telling you about this, said Andrew Edis QC to the jurors. It's not in any way a moral judgment. The point is, Mrs. Brooks and Mr. Coulson are charged with a conspiracy, and when that happens, the first question, he said, for a jury is to decide how well they knew one another, how much they trusted one another. And the point is, Rebekah Brooks and Andy Coulson, he said, trusted one another a lot. As evidence, said Mr. Edis, by a letter found on Rebekah Brooks's computer dated February 2004. It's said to have been written by Mrs. Brooks to Andy Coulson as he was seemingly trying to end their affair.
Finally, and the least of our worries, but how do we really work this new relationship? The fact is, you are my very best friend. I tell you everything, I confide in you, I seek your advice, I love you, care about you, worry about you. We laugh and cry together. In fact, without our relationship in my life, I'm really not sure how I will cope. I'm frightened to be without you. The thought of finding out anything about you or your life from someone else fills me with absolute dread. Also, you said I had to email you if anything important happened. Like if I was ill? I don't understand this. We are either there for each other or not, surely. Anyway, that really isn't where I'm confused. I know what horror it means, and I know why we have to stick to it.
As this deeply personal letter was read out before a packed courtroom, Rebekah Brooks looked ahead, her notes in her lap. Andy Coulson, sitting beside her, as per the order of names listed in the indictment, also looked straight ahead. And then the prosecution turned to the subject of Millie Dowler. She was the teenager who went missing in Surrey in 2002, her body only discovered 6 months later.
We're devastated.
A period when the schoolgirl's family went through an agony of hope, the court heard today. A period when the News of the World hacked her phone. It was alleged today that Rebekah Brooks, then editor of the News of the World, and Andy Coulson, her deputy, must have known about the hacking and sanctioned it. Hacking which had been carried out by the paper's private investigator and blagger, Glenn Mulcaire. It was June 2001 when Glenn Mulcaire received one of his first taskings by journalists at the News of the World. He was a good hacker and an accomplished blagger, said the prosecution, able to get into people's voicemails by discovering their passcodes. At one point today, the court was played a recording of Glenn Mulcaire calling a phone company to get a voicemail code reset. Good afternoon, how are you? He asked the woman who answers the phone. He's conversational, chatty, confident. He offers the password albatross, and within a matter of seconds, he's given a new code. We learned today that the News of the World's former managing editor, Stuart Kuttner, made 221 payments to Glenn Mulcaire, totalling £413,000. He knew what Mulcaire was doing, claimed the prosecution, because management then were fastidious at scrutinising costs. As illustrated by this email from Rebekah Brooks to a desk editor. I'm very worried about news desk spending, she says. What's going on? I've stressed to you that going over budget is unacceptable. It's a disciplinary matter. In the meantime, she continues, you'll have to authorise any spending over £1,000 with me, Andy and Stuart. The court was also told today about the News of the World's 2006 targeting of then Cabinet Ministers Lord Prescott and Tessa Jowell.
Good morning. This is becoming a bit of a habit.
Tessa Jowell was a big story, jurors heard. Her then husband David Mills in the press over bribery allegations in Italy. The hacking of Tessa Jowell said to be very vigorous. They allegedly hacked an advisor of John Prescott too, as they tried to delve into his then affair with Diary Secretary Tracy Temple. And then orchestrated by former news editor Ian Edmondson, it's claimed the News of the World hacked the phones of 2 journalists at the Mail on Sunday who were chasing the same story. In the dog-eat-dog world of journalism, said the prosecution, that's what you do perhaps. If you're Ian Edmondson, you hack the competition. This evening, Mr. Edmondson's old colleagues, Andy Coulson and Rebekah Brooks, faced the cameras once again as they left court. All 8 defendants deny the charges against them.